Shakespeare never went to university. I have a PhD, and I'd never claimed to be as brilliant as Shakespeare. To me, anybody with a PhD who does today, they're naive. But that's something to think about. Shakespeare didn't have a PhD, didn't have a master's degree, didn't even have a bachelor's degree. There were plenty of people in his time that had those things. He was married at 18, and I'm sure he learned some things in grammar school, but you can't get that brilliant without teaching yourself in some way. Self-learning, lifelong self-education. Shakespeare's plays draw on the classics. We have access to the classics today, just as Shakespeare did. You can read chronicles of Julius Caesar and write your own play. In fact, all education is self-learning, is lifelong learning. Afternoon. You can't teach somebody something that they don't want to learn it, right? And you can learn things even without a teacher. And I suspect this is how Shakespeare did it. Coming from a poor, rural town, much like myself. I said the dad is a town bailiff. I think that'd be like being on the town council. Didn't really say what he did for a living. We do know he didn't go to college. He got married, had family at 18, and moved from the little town to London. He didn't write in Latin or Greek or anything either, so none of the educated languages, but in English. But he must have read the classics in English. As such, Shakespeare could be a model for our goals in lifelong learning. Our studies in history in English, even if they're originally written in Greek or Latin or Chinese, in translation. Not perfect, but it's a good option, especially if you're 50. Learning a new language to any kind of use is hard, you know, and time is probably better spent reading the great works, reading Mary Shelley, reading Victor Hugo, reading Ovid, reading Julius Caesar, reading Jesus, not in their original languages. Today, with a lot of hard work and without any credentials at all, you can go from a high school dropout to being a world expert on any topic, on any specific topic. You have to start thinking like a PhD student as you study, but if you think about it, what does it take for somebody to become an expert in the poetry of North England in the 1850s to 1890s, right? Or historian of the Battle of Little Bighorn, or a philosopher analyzing how Heidegger's thought relates to Republican Party politics. Well, what does a PhD do then, right? Let's say you like this idea of becoming an expert in something, in some way contributing to human knowledge, something new. Well, how do PhDs get there? So many don't really. I mean, they do. They push with their dissertation, but that was such a Herculean effort that they never do research again. And others, like myself, not even working in universities and tenure lines, continue to write and produce a little bit of knowledge that lives on. Well, do you need a PhD to read Shakespeare? No. Let's say you focus in on one one play. Let's say you become an expert in, I don't know, Macbeth. There's a classic. Now, first thing you do is you make sure you read Macbeth a lot of times. That's what a PhD student's going to do. But they're also going to read introductions, ones that go back to the time of Shakespeare, the whole way to the most modern introductions. They're going to read a lot of the same information over and over again about Macbeth. They're going to read studies about Macbeth in a variety of fields, right? There's going to be sociological studies, feminist studies, Marxist studies, analysis of this one little play. There's going to be linguistic analysis, maybe analysis of musical aspects, right? The whole human sphere. And you're going to read those studies. The beautiful thing is, folk like me who write studies put a lot of our work, if not all of it, but a lot of it on ResearchGate, which you can go ahead and join and get free copies of a lot of things. You don't have to join it, but if you join, you can actually request things that are behind paywalls at JSTOR or Sage that you can't get. Email the author and say, hey, you wrote this analysis of the lyrical elements of Macbeth poems. I would love to read your work. I've been studying Macbeth on my own. Can you send it to me? And 9 times out of 10, you might get a copy of it sent to you. A PDF, and then you can print it out, study that, analyze it, but then you'll find out, oh, look at this reference list. There's actually a bunch here that looks interesting. There's 5 or 6 different articles here in a book that looks like it would be interesting to study more about this lyrical aspect of Macbeth. Actually, I'm making this up, I don't know for sure if this is even a field of study. Then you find but it might be, then you find a small conference that's being held. And so maybe you can go to it, right? Pay a couple $100, take a trip, especially if it's in the summertime or some other time when you can take a vacation, just for interest, sit in the back and listen. One of the big things PhD students do at conferences is just sit and listen to how academic conversation goes on. You also find conferences that are already online, where the discourse is happening, the conversation is happening that you're interested in. It might take you 10 years, but you can get to the same place as any PhD, publisher, scholar, you know, maybe not the best, right? You think about the difference between someone who's a professional football player and someone who's a perennial Pro Bowler, right? There's a big difference there. But you can get to that point where you're one of the people that, you know, might even be known in a field, maybe even get a reference, maybe you get a publication, maybe your presentation somewhere gets a reference. But after spending some time at a conference listening, a couple years, think about a PhD that does this for 4 or 5 years. Maybe in their 5th year they ask one question because they know enough of the field to really ask something, right? And then all of a sudden they're part of that conversation around whatever their chosen topic is. PhDs are so very specific. I don't recommend this for sciences because sciences generally require labs, though I did at University of Arizona see a keynote presenter who was a scientist who did all observational studies of ecology, and basically all that required was a recording device and going to the same place for years and years and years and taking rigorous mathematical notes. So I guess it could be done in that way, you know, maybe a theoretical physicist instead of a research physicist, if that's your interest. But the truth is, I don't think the university system is doing well. Look at the news. Just look into all these universities. They're all complaining about not having money. There's universities closing. But the forward progress of knowledge is something we can all participate in. Credentials be damned. And even if all your studies do is make you better, and you're never able to actually contribute anything new to knowledge, isn't that worth it? boy, isn't it, you could have spent the last 10 years studying Northern English poetry from the 1850 to 1890. Oh, wouldn't it be a brilliant thing to know? Wouldn't it be a brilliant thing to know?